Hello and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most rowdy work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are, as per usual, coming at you live in the Discord. Pew, pew, pew. So if you want some of that hot, fresh Discord action, you got to go to duffmedia.com/Discord, and that's where you'll find more information.
Yeah, if you're not on the Discord, you're missing out on great tattoo care chat and stuff like that. You know, top tier emergency level content.
Yep, and silly, silly memes. Now, we're here to talk about two chapters, Elliot. Wild Man and 18C, which is with Big Ted, and 18... Gosh, I've lost count. 18-8, that's it. Ooh. So 18C, we're with Papa Ted as he is preparing for a vacation, juggling a minor argument with his wife, rowdy kids, packing things, and all kinds of shenanigans. But it looks set to be a fun family vacay.
Yeah, sorry. You called him Big Ted. Is play school an Australian thing? Like, is that going to make sense to anyone, that joke? Because I liked it. But
yeah, I thought it was good. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. But yeah, I feel like we have to start with just the like obligatory chuckle at the fact that Anthem's wife's name was Victoria.
I don't know why that's so funny.
It's Elliot. Well, I can explain the joke to you if you like, but
no, yeah, it's interesting that Wildbow decided to set Pale in the same universe as Ward, but you know, whatever. It's his stories. He can do with them what he wants.
The crossover we needed. Yeah, I mean, like the question this brought up to me is: did Anthem pick a girl who had a name like this? Is it a coincidence? Did she change her name to Victoria? Like, yeah, that's true. We don't actually know that Vicky isn't short for Victory. I don't think she's ever called anything but Vicky.
Oh, interesting.
So
maybe it's Victory Ted.
But again, like that can't have been her birth name, unless
there's other Ted-esque families out there and they were, matched.
Yeah, or just the one.
Sure. True.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so this is just such a nothing comment. I just think it's funny that like he ended up with a wife whose name kind of fits the theme, and I'm like, was that a factor in their initial courtship? Like,
yeah,
like did Anthem head out into the world looking for somebody whose name would like suit his theme?
They had to match the Ted naming theme. Yeah, I really liked this little practitioner idiom that Anthem throws out where he says, "Oh, war, put your sword to my throat." It's like a just melodramatic way of saying, like, I guess, like, God forbid kind of vibes. Yeah. But it's just so silly. I loved it. It's very fun.
It's like, I feel like about halfway through the chapter, Verona sort of switched to saying like gods and spirits instead of like, oh God. And it's like a very similar vibe, but
yeah,
the war practitioner version.
Yeah, it's fun, very fun.
That's it. Like it does sort of tie into like the other big thing here, which is like you're right. That's like the first thing Anthem says. He's just like, "Oh, war, put your sword to my throat," and it's like right from the get go, he's very much like defined by this need to fight as a person. Like even before shit gets bad, and we're obviously going to get to like what he thinks of Vicky and her strategies for dealing with her illness later on. But like everything about him right from the get go is very conflict oriented. Like he even thinks of Liberty's cries in terms of like how nature has attuned them to get past his defenses. Like he's not. It's not, oh, my daughter needs something. It's, this cry has been designed by nature to make sure I can't ignore it, or blah, 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 blah. And yeah, like, he is constantly pushing back against Vicky about letting this just be a holiday. Like, he always needs to be doing, like, fighting, even back here.
Yeah, it's definitely, there's a lot of, like his desire to keep striving characterizes the grief and anger that he feels at what is about to happen, and like, and kind of frames his disappointment in Liberty. Yeah, he just can't chillax, can he?
Yeah, I guess it's just interesting because this is like clearly a different, like a younger, less broken down Anthem, but it's still very much Anthem. Like you can still see these seeds of this is a guy who doesn't know how to turn off and stop fighting. Like you can see the link from how this young guy became the Anthem that we know in the story up until this point.
Mm.
Um, I think like the one exception to him constantly fighting is he does relent and pack the blanket away for Vicky. Like she does eventually sort of get him to give in and stop fighting, but
Well,
it still takes a lot, and it's over a blanket.
yeah. Anthem definitely gets the vibes that their last moments are a fight. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
um,
because
yeah.
he went and chose a blanket she didn't like.
Yeah, but like, it's fun to note like their connection and the fact that they're a good match for each other obviously has something to do with their personalities meshing well, and the fact that they're both stubborn is maybe part of that, or whatever. But it is interesting to me that Anthem recognizes that their stubbornness has turned their last moments together into a fight, but doesn't kind of go the extra step further and think, oh, maybe I should be less stubborn.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
lesson of this chapter, right? And he doesn't learn it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I guess the other side of that is what I thought was really interesting is like until the end of this chapter, I think the first time we've ever seen Anthem actually back down is in this moment with Vicky with the blanket, and it was this bit of a moment for me. It was like, oh, like you can see how this is still very much Anthem, but if we'd had like the last 13 years had been the Anthem with like Vicky by his side, he might have come out of it a better person because she was the one, whether it's because she was stubborn or whatever, like she could get him to just chill the fuck out with a bit of effort. Um,
Mm.
and it's just like that voice that he actually listened to being beside him for the last 13 years might have been really good for him because, yeah, I don't know. It's just like because I mean, this has been the thing with Anthem for the whole time. He's so close to being good. Like, there's so much good in him here. Like, he's trying to take care of Liberty. He's playing with America. Like, he's just being a pretty decent dad for all of
Mm.
this.
Mm.
Um, just kind of a bit of a shitty husband, but like I could see the link between how if Vicky had not passed, we could have had an Anthem who came out of the other side of this a much better person.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, who knows? Vicky might have made him worse. Like we don't know that much about her. She could have been really horrible.
I mean, I think the strategy she had for like coping with her illness suggests to me that she was
Sure.
a dampening force on all his war mage bullshit.
Fair enough. As a counterpoint to that, America had the most time with her and is more in order of villainousness. It's ranked by whoever had the most time with Vicky, with Anthem at the top, America in the middle, and Liberty at the bottom. So I don't know.
Yeah, because she like made them suppress the most of it. Came back with interest.
Yeah, sure. But anyway, so Anthem's kind of taking care of the kids. Liberty's not settling down. Anthem goes to help Vicky with the packing, but yes, she has passed away quietly, suddenly, and quite tragically.
I mean, this scene is just genuinely heartbreaking. I think rereading it the second time was even more gutting than the first. Like knowing it was coming.
Mm,
Yeah, this was crushing.
mm, yeah. It's pretty rough, isn't it? I found Anthem's narration style here really interesting because, like, he's someone that comes across as very analytical in his narration style, but then in this part, he's like, it's like he's skipping beats. You know what I mean? Like, and it gives this impression. To give an example, we get the line, one was bloodshot. He checked airway. And then the next line is on the third chest compression, he felt ribs break, which is obviously we've missed like, okay, she's not breathing, start chest compressions. Okay. And, we've missed like a few seconds as he's kind of taking his steps. And it helps you really feel the disorientation and panic from the scene. And I think it's nice. I quite like it.
Yeah, I think, and I think there's like a bunch of other moments like that too. Like there's the one where he eventually I think stops the compressions, and then the next line is just Liberty's screaming stopped. The light in the room
Mm,
got unbearably bright as the light cloud cover parted, and he just realizes like hours have passed. Like he seems to like sort of skip over. I don't know, like all of the non conflict doesn't feel like the right word, but like all the stuff that isn't like doing, like working, like anything that isn't the work, kind of mostly gets skipped.
yeah.
Um, and like I think we see later America is the one who actually points out to him that he's crying. Like the
Mm,
narration never mentions it. He
mm,
he comes out and America says you're crying, and that's the first we hear of it.
yeah.
Um, and then like later on, he eventually acknowledges that he was crying, but only in the context of it has caused him to become dehydrated. Like it's like now it has become a tactical consideration. He must acknowledge that he cried all his water away.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Like he's just
uh,
even back in this, sort of softer, younger Anthem, he's still already very deep in like, yeah, needing to be on all the time.
mm,
And when he's not on, he just kind of isn't focused. He's so detached from like the human side of himself already.
yeah. Yeah. He's an interesting character, isn't he? He's very I like being in his head. It's very
Yeah,
fun. I think people in chat, and I saw this comment a bit on the Reddit as well, is that it's kind of Taylor-esque, which I can definitely see for those same reasons.
yeah, it's similar-ish, yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely, yeah, like you notice as well, he just immediately starts that CPR. Like as you were talking about, he jumped into the CPR, no acknowledgement that emotionally this was devastating to him, and this all sort of comes up in a bit where he's sort of thinking about how like he kind of resents Vicky for dying here like this because she didn't consider the options he laid out, and like he lists all the shit he wanted to do. Like obviously he wanted to take her to talk to those supposed weirdos and stuff like who took bits out. Like he kind of resents Vicky not fighting it with everything she could because he can't understand how that's not like giving up and being shit. And I
Mm.
guess like you could just see the link to how that's caused the current stuff with Liberty in America. Like he's had to close himself off from understanding why someone wouldn't constantly fight all the time for everything they can.
Yeah, he he's refusing to let I mean, he has to keep fighting as we've talked about, and the fact that Vicky won't do that is very it's offensive to him, and it leads to this mix of this blend of anger and grief, and this very kind of emotionally complex situation, and it
Yeah.
works really well.
Because it's a really understandable reaction to like your loved one seemingly not doing everything they can to still be in your life. Like
Yeah.
Vicky has essentially chosen like it reminds me a lot of like all the shit around like Ray and his son.
Mm,
Um it's touching on some of the same points. Just like it is Vicky's choice, but you can see why someone like Anthem would be kind of devastated that she's not willing to explore options that would let her be in the rest of his and their daughter's lives.
yes, with an asterisk.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah,
Um,
100%.
yeah. You can understand it. It's yeah, it's
As
tragic. It's
Yeah,
tragedy.
well, especially and again for someone like Anthem who is just he's always on. He just literally can't fathom. Like that's the other thing I think for a normal person you can be like, I understand why there would be a bit of a resentment. But
Mm,
yeah, particularly for Anthem because he just can't comprehend not fighting.
yeah,
So like, he takes it worse than I think the average person would.
yeah, yeah.
Um and sorry, it also in Vicky's defense, he sort of lists out the methods that she wouldn't consider. And one of them was she wouldn't talk to Alania. And I was like, oh, that name sounds familiar. So I looked it up. And that's like Alania Grobard, like
Mm,
the lady who made Shay and all the other dolls.
mm,
And it was one of those moments of, okay, well, I mean, Anthem, I don't know that there were going to be any good options from that. Wait, it's like, it's like that old debate between Lucy and Verona, like what options are just not even worth discussing. Like, I feel like going to the Grobards for help is one of those ones where it's like, if somebody said, I don't want any of the Grobards' help, I'd be like, yeah, that's fair.
I want to talk about that quote because I'm looking at it now. And it says she wouldn't talk to Sheila and Glenn. We don't know what the deal there. She wouldn't talk to Eliana. No shamans. No medical doctors. Is that right? Is that the right quote? Should that say witch
Yeah.
doctors?
No, I think it was medical doctors. I think because it was like cancer or something. I think, and
Right,
so I think
right.
she'd
So she doesn't want
gone past what,
chemotherapy. Yeah.
yeah, what you know.
Yeah.
I want to call it conventional medicine, but that makes it like just non-magical
All practitioner
medicine.
medicine is homeopathic.
Um, yeah, that's the real lesson of this story.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Um
like yeah, I don't know. It was just one of those things where it was like, yeah, some of these it's like understandable that he's a bit annoyed she wouldn't do stuff like maybe get more chemo or whatever, but also being like, oh, she wouldn't talk to the Grobards. I'm kind of like, oh, I'm on Vicky's side on that one. I think that doesn't seem like an avenue that's going to have any good options in it.
yeah. Yeah. Um so yeah. Uh yeah, Anthem kind of comes back to reality after a few hours. Uh and takes America and Liberty out of the house, kind of giving them a beach day, and calls up his BFF AJ to come and clean the house.
It's such a fun look at AJ here from the perspective of like actually one of his mates. Like,
Mm,
I mean, this has to have presumably been pretty early. Well, I mean, we know it was 13 years ago, I suppose, but
yeah.
like the fact that AJ or Abraham doesn't even fight against being called AJ to me suggests this is before the
Before his
I don't-
ascension.
yeah, the I was trying to
Yeah.
think of a good word for it. Ascension's perfect. Like yeah, like and I mean, I was thinking this is the first because even in the modern day, we actually see Anthem think of Musa as AJ a few times. Like this is the first POV where we're seeing someone actually think of him as AJ since AJ's own interlude, basically. Um, like it's just this moment of like, oh, no wonder like Anthem is so loyal to Musa. Like what AJ does for him here is like a huge good bro friend move. And also we get our look in the present. You can see that Anthem still thinks of him as AJ. He hasn't like fully clued in seemingly to how he's Musa now. He's not AJ.
Mm, yeah. Um, AJ is interesting in this scene, right? Like, he seems so chill. He seems
Yeah,
so
like
nice.
he's genuinely like, you don't owe me anything. Like
Yeah.
this is horrible. I'm so sorry for you. Like, are you okay? Like he's just
He's
a good
actually a
friend.
human being. Yeah.
Yeah, that was what made me be like, oh, this has to be before the Ascension. I just, which maybe is unfair on how manipulative Musa can be, but I don't know. It just feels like these two guys who went to school and are just genuinely still friends.
Yeah. Um, and it gives color to Anthem's loyalty to AJ in the present as well, of course.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I can fully understand wanting to back the guy who did this for you and having a bit of a blind spot for how much of a turd basket he is when he
Yeah.
did do stuff like this for you. Like, yeah. And again, in the present, he still thinks of him as AJ. So, like, which feels like a signal that he hasn't moved on from thinking of him as the guy who will clean up the house with your dead wife in it.
Mm, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I just wanted to call out the last line of this segment before we cut back to the present is when Anthem looks in his own eyes for the first time and he thinks like with the hurt there was an anger that much was clear in the redness, the lines around his eyes, and the long stare that it felt like she'd given up. And I love that last line as a way to end this whole segment just to really make sure like it's clear to us that like the link from what has happened here with Vicky to why Anthem is like this with America and Liberty.
Yeah.
Like he's angry at her because he thinks she gave up and he will just refuse to let Liberty and America do anything but like work their ass off all the time so that they never have to go through anything like this.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. It's a very clear through line. And yeah, I mean, like a very fun, a very fun interlude character, very fun perspective character. He's very fun
Yeah.
to be in the mind of. We cut back to the present, and Anthem decides to reluctantly engage Lucy in combat.
Yeah, and I I think we skipped this last week. I'm not 100% sure, but I don't remember talking about it, and I'm really mad if we did because there was a whole segment in our notes last week where we talked about how Lucy was like everything Anthem wanted his daughters to be in a way,
Mm.
and it's just like 100 times truer in this chapter than it was like last week. Like this whole fight is just like I mean, Anthem loves Lucy in this. Like he's having a ball fighting her. There's like all this stuff, and he's just like he so admires Lucy's like drive and like skill and versatility. Like it's everything. He even says later, like he'd want Lucy to be Liberty's friend if she wasn't so
Yeah.
anti Musser.
Yeah.
But like what's so great about that is like Lucy hates this. Like I feel like a huge chunk of Lucy's arc has been her coming was sort of centered around this idea that like she's going to be this great warrior and this warrior for justice, but that's like a result of the world failing and failing her. Like she's not doing this fighting because it's a good thing, it's a good way to do stuff. She's doing it because she has to, because otherwise the world crushes her. Like I just love that she's such a great foil to like Anthem's whole idea for liberty in America, because Lucy is kind of what he'd want them to be. But her whole thing is, this is shit. Nobody should have to be like this. Like I do this because I have to.
Mm.
And like that's really what this whole fight is about. Lucy is fighting him, just trying to get him to realize that like she doesn't want to fight him. Like she'd love to have any other thing, but he can't. He's like forgotten that other options exist.
Yeah. Um, yeah. It's very fun. It's a very fun ideological fight. And you're right. I love that Anthem is like Lucy has kind of earned Anthem's respect through her fighting ability and some of the tricks she has up her sleeve and stuff. Um,
But then also, so he does keep getting pissed at her because she keeps trying to just talk or like do other
yeah,
things. Like yeah,
there's one quote that I really liked where Lucy she shifts her stance. She aims the trident not for him but for the gun, and he thinks he wasn't surprised. She didn't have that kind of killer instinct, and it's like I can see he just wants to be Guillermaying her and giving her fighting advice.
yeah.
Which is very
But
fun.
yeah, like he's got that same like Milo Sonjite mentality of like it's stupid not to be going for the kill.
Mm.
Like yeah, like Lucy is so close to being what he wants from his daughters, but the big ideological thing is that yeah, she thinks fighting is a fail state, whereas he sees it as like the good natural way to do things.
Yeah.
And it's like they're so close and yet so far apart, and it just makes it such a like great fight to read.
Yes, I love this bit where Lucy's like, isn't it not worth the hassle to just go and talk to Liberty? And Anthem says, sorry, but fighting you is closer to being nothing than it is to changing my mind," which is just such a fucking burn. I love it.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we're in his head. We know he is just kind of very casual throughout this whole fight. Like he doesn't feel threatened. Whereas, whenever we're in Lucy's head, she kicks ass in these fights, but she's like stressed and worried and like giving her everything in all those fights, even though she rules. Anthem was just sort of like, and then I'll do this, and I guess I'll go for this. And like later on, like I think he lets Lucy stab him, and he thinks this is the first meaningful like thing that I've suffered all night.
Yeah.
I mean, we should shout out his practice though. Like seeing him fight from his POV was a very fun. Like his deck of cards. I think we heard about someone using a deck of cards like this in the implement extra material back in the day, but like
Mm.
seeing it here, it's just like I was like, that's such a good way of doing things. Like he can walk around with like an entire arsenal, but
Yeah.
still just be like not weighed down. Like he doesn't have to carry a backpack full of guns.
Yeah, he's very he's always ready to go. He's always got a bunch of tricks up his sleeve, and they're good tricks too. I mean, they get him through a bunch of fights.
Yeah, and like his sight has essentially turned into like projectile prediction and like area of effect stuff. It's like very like the sort of HUD stuff you get in like virtual like Warhammer games and stuff, where you like see the effect of every attack.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. We also get some good Scott Martin the Spider Breather stuff, and
Yeah.
he is delightful, and I can't wait for his interlude.
He's so great. I love his interaction with Lucy too. I'd forgotten that like Lucy specifically has an anti-spider thing.
Mm.
So I loved that moment where like Martin or Scott shows up and like does some stuff, and then Lucy's like, "Why have you done this?" And he's like, "I like spiders." And Lucy's like, "Why?" Like I
Yeah.
felt like she was channeling her inner Grimsy with that
Hmm.
question.
Yeah. It was good stuff.
Um, yeah, what a guy. I love Scott.
What a champion.
He's just such a great guy too. I want to see more of him and his weird spiders.
Mm. Yeah.
Oh, I love his sword too. The like the warden sword. Like I thought it was a really funny way to kind of capture how Anthem works a bit. Like it's designed to encourage him to be a good warden, like slash
Mm.
dad.
Mm.
But he just does the letter of its law. Like he says, like it doesn't really matter if I like am doing the spirit of it. I just need to meet the letter of the law. And then also he uses the rest of his power to just scrub out the parts that he doesn't like. Like he promises to do like
Mm.
4 things, and then he looks at 2 of them. And he's like, I don't want to do those. I'll just throw money at it. It's like very much the vibe of like a guy who's had private tutors and like maids raise his kids. Like he's their dad, but he uses power to scrub out the parts of the job he doesn't want to do.
Mm. Yeah. He's it's a very good small metaphor for who he is.
Yeah. Um, And again, this is another thing I think we may have skipped over from last week's notes that we had in there. But it's what it's saying. So it's talking about like Scott Martin and obviously Sin is here too. They were the 2 fence sitters
Mm.
on like in terms of going away with the Garricks, right? So
Mm.
it feels like a thing that Anthem was told to bring them. Like that feels like Massa used the augurs to realize they were the ones on the
They were on
fence.
the fence. Yeah,
And yeah.
maybe. I wonder if it's just like maybe that's the reason Musset didn't take them originally, but now they're too strong to be left behind. Like they might actually become a liability if they switch sides.
Well, yeah, like I mean, it's this thing where it's like this is the problem with something like Mus's Corporation is the real loyal people are less likely to actually get saved here because they're safe bets, whereas Sin and Scott being kind of on the fence, it's like they get more perks. It's like the loyal employee getting paid less than the new poached employee because it's like we need to give them more money because their loyalty isn't as given.
Mm.
um, like you sort of get punished for being a loyal, uh, Musa servant. I don't know what they call themselves.
Yeah. Um, there's this moment during this fight that you can almost miss if you're not paying attention, but Anthem is choking Lucy out for like a full 30 seconds. Like he's having a few little chit chats in between while he's still choking her out. Like, I hope Jasmine didn't see that. That's pretty fucked.
I don't think she was there for that, but this is no doubt one of the big things that landed her in hospital after this.
Yup.
Because it's. Uh, I mean, yeah, Anthem definitely has. He constantly has this vibe. It's like, look, I'm not trying to kill you, but could you just like pass out or stop fighting? Like he's not trying to kill her, but he's not holding back from fucking her right up.
Mm. Yeah. He's happy to really mess her up.
Um, Yeah. Oh, and sorry to I guess talk about like Lucy and her side of things because even though this is like an Anthem POV fight, we talked so much last week about how great like Anthem is as this kind of face of like a baddie for like a chunk of Lucy's arc, and I just love this line, this one exchange that they have where Anthem sort of says, talking about like what he's doing for his daughters. He says, "This is the cost. I open the doors. If they don't walk through, I'll still be here holding those doors open."
Mm.
And Lucy responds, "Take it from someone who's pretty much been there. I think they'd rather you were with them instead of holding the door like some asshole." And I just love that for summarizing like the small but absolutely massive ideological gap between these two. Like Anthem sees his role as just to open the doors for his daughters, whereas Lucy's like, "Hey, what about being a dad though?"
Mm.
And this feels like her yelling at people like John, who John went off and chose duty above like actually being there for her.
Yeah, it feels very much on that topic, doesn't it? And yeah, like Anthem just doesn't get this, and hopefully gets it by the end of the chapter, but we'll see.
Yeah, It's just, I think it's easy to forget, as like we all fall so in love with Anthem and like his side of this fight and what it means for his story. I almost kept losing track of the fact that like this is just such a good fight for like Lucy's character journey as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Lucy loses this first engagement, so she runs off. Anthem secures escape for his group by calling in the only backup he can trust, but the escape unfortunately does not go perfectly.
Yeah, and these simulacrums of Anthem are very fun. I love that he's so like afraid of driven despair. Like he's creating all of these like bits of him that are like, these are what make me effective in combat. You know, I have a bloodlust, I have support from my brothers in arms. Um I'm also kind of driven by despair and like, you know, my misery drives me forward, but I don't like to look at that one. Like I acknowledge that it's there, but don't look me in the eyes, please. It
Yeah.
just pretty much sums up where he's at mentally.
Yeah, it's yeah, there's a lot going on with these simulacrums. I like that he, as he calls each of them out, he gives a little spiel about them. But Brother in Arms comes out and he says, "Oh, that one's the one that's nice and cares about camaraderie." And that's it. Like, he doesn't say anything else about it. And it's funny because that's like the most wholesome one, and he just has no commentary on it at all.
No, because like I mean, it's so Anthem. He's just thinking of like these are the aspects of himself that make him a good warrior, and like
Mm-hmm.
that's as far as he's willing to consciously process what they mean to him.
Yep, it's very funny.
Um, Also, like a second shout out to Scott Martin here because I just wanted to say, like, I really saw how like he got his reputation for being so powerful and dangerous here. Not just because like you know he made some 18-foot spider spirits and all that shit, but like he clearly has like a sight that's really attuned into understanding like what's happening with the spirits, which seems like a really powerful way of doing stuff. Like he mentions the spirits are like licking their metaphorical lips when Verona's about to drop the bridge, and like you know he sort of understands how Lucy's doing some stuff that Anthem hasn't picked up on. Like
Mm.
it seems like he's got one of the most useful sites for
Yeah,
figuring shit out.
he's very clearly quite competent, and yet the only thing he does is make spiders. And like we keep getting references to how strong Scott Martin is, and yet all he does is make little spiders. And I'm kind of
Well,
like, I can't wait to see it more.
yeah, I think to be fair, the exact thing about how he was being super that was like in terms of being in the spirit world. Like
Yes.
I think he's like, you know, kind of powerful in the real world, but like if you're in the spirit world, like he goes up like 10x because
Yeah.
he's interacting directly with the spirits. But it's just like like him the way he describes stuff going on, like he's so in tune with spiritual flows, which just seems like the best kind of sight to have because everything kind of comes back to spirits at the end of the day. So like realizing the spirits think something is up feels like the best way to be able to handle things that are going to come up.
Mm.
Um, like it's very similar. That's kind of how Verona's sight works. Like she sees the underpinnings of how things work. So she's always been quite good at like spotting when some things are up with people because she kind of sees spiritual meaty manifestations of what they're built up of.
Mm.
Um, like it just seems like the best way. It seems like the most useful sight type to me.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It does seem very useful.
And I suppose the member of this quartet that we haven't talked about at all is Cavender. I can't even remember his first name, but
Mark?
I don't know, the shit stooge guy is
Mm-hmm.
his full name. Like he's
Yeah.
just like because I think we first learned about the Cavenders in the Eastern Interlude where we weren't there like a step below the Sonjates on the hierarchy. And you could really feel that here. Like Cavender doesn't really contribute anything. And in fact, when he offers Anthem's always like, oh please don't. I don't you probably can't beat her. I don't have enough of a read to know whether you can actually fight this 14-year-old girl.
Yeah.
But yeah. Just like bottom tier war mages. This guy's lucky to have gotten a ticket, to be honest.
Yeah, how did he get a ticket to escape? He's a real scrub.
It's just that war mage bias.
Yeah. Um This is a fun moment where these four are just kind of hanging out and trying to figure out how to escape. I really, this is such a fun interlude. I really loved it.
Yeah, so good. They get attacked by a guy who's like a guy comes in. He's like, "I'm unstoppable, motherfuckers," and he's dressed in dumb armor. And then Anthem pretty quickly
Pretty quickly
stops him.
stops him. Yeah.
Was that Stu Mullen?
No, I had the same thought for a bit, but Stu Mullen is actually unstoppable, so I don't think it would have been him.
Okay, that makes sense.
This was just some pretender pretending to be unstoppable.
A pretender to the throne.
No, I think Stu is not as verbose.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Actually, yeah, it's Stu Mullen doesn't wear external armor. His skin is his armor. That's right. That's
he's yeah.
Oh yeah, one other thing from this segment. Anthem sorts through a bunch of spell cards, like as well as his deck of magical objects he can pull out of his cards. He's also just got like a pile of spell cards that he starts dropping, and I was like, is that the first person we've seen do that outside of the Kenneteers? Like I thought. I don't think we've seen other people come prepared with like a deck of pre-drawn runes before. Because most practitioners don't have the power base handy to just start dropping runes left, right, and center.
Yeah, it seems like the only people that really use spell cards much are Verona, Anthem, and Loose Nacida. But apart from those three, it's not very popular in the practitioner world.
Who?
You should watch. It's an Owl House reference, Elliot.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if I just misunderstood you saying a pale character I'd full on forgotten or not.
No. I mean, effectively, they are a pale character.
Okay. Because we see the Kenneteers do it or whatever, but I was like, I think Anthem's the first non-Kenneteer, and like it really sort of speaks to the strength of the Kenneteers that like Anthem here, so much of the shit he does, he fights like a Kenneteer, really.
Yeah.
Just with more practice. But like you can start to see why the Kenneteers are such units, because Anthem is like top tier, and the Kenneteers are like mini versions of him almost.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, God, it's just such a fun chapter. Like the structure of this chapter, the fact that the Kenneteers are going all out, and like this is just from Lucy, like rallying her sense of justice to unite everybody, and it works. Like it's just so good to reread this chapter knowing like they're going all out and it's actually gonna work.
Yeah, because it is important to remember like this wasn't really like the plan more than half an hour ago.
They
right?
weren't planning on attacking Anthem at all. They were just going to let him
Lucy,
go.
Yeah, last chapter, Lucy's like, "Can I do something about this?" And like people like Toadstool are like, "I mean, have a dig, like, but no pressure." And yeah, like this is just Lucy kind of willing a victory over Anthem by calling in all of her chips and just refusing to give up.
Yeah, and it works.
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually. So yeah, Anthem, Lucy goes for a 1v1 against Anthem, and he accepts, only to find out it's the old Milo special, and he's fighting against Guillerme, but he wins that fight anyway. So well played, Anthem.
I mean, I obviously on this like second read, all of this double speak where it's Guillerme as Lucy, as always, is a delight. I particularly love the part where Guillerme as Lucy says to Anthem, like, "Nothing changes. That's the problem, isn't it?" Which is just such a. I mean, that's such a good Lucy line, but it's also just a perfect Guillerme line. It's so good.
I love the bit where Lucy stands. Her hands are up, and Anthem notes she has a duelist's mark on the palm of her right hand, the same one she'd had trouble making a fist with earlier. Just like fun little beat.
Yeah, I think there are lots of clues. You can feel that something's off with the start of this fight, but I didn't expect it to be. I thought Guillerme was still out of action, so I was like, "Oh, I wonder what this is." And then it was just Guillerme. I was like, "God, these fairy keep like tricking me by underplaying stuff. I keep expecting like 10 levels of play by the fairy, and they just trick you by. No, it's the same thing he did before. He's a winter fairy. Of course, he just did the same thing as he did before.
Yep, it is. It's good stuff.
Yeah, so I know we've already sort of touched a little bit on like how Anthem and Anthem's kind of vibing with Lucy. Like he's frustrated with some of her ideology, but overall he's very close to actually really liking her. Um, and I think it's just worth calling out how fun he is in this fight with her. Like he's just, I think as you said before, he's like on the verge of just trying to like Guillermo style teach her lessons,
Mm.
and like encouraging her. He like when she does stuff, he's like, "Oh, that was really good." Like it's just a fun vibe of like, like when he keeps making her take breaks to like take her healing potions. He's like, "This would be the tactical time for you to consume your drink." Like he's like naturally gravitating towards wanting to coach her, and yeah.
Yeah. I think Anthem's biggest mistake is becoming too close to being a father figure to Lucy, and that's what causes him to lose this fight.
That was his fatal mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I do think it's also not an accident that like their conversations are actually the most productive and friendly in the middle of the fight.
Mm.
Like you notice how whenever they're not fighting and Lucy's like doing other stuff and trying to talk to him, it doesn't get through. But he's far more approachable and friendly to her when they're in the middle of actually fighting. Like it's sort of justifying Lucy having to do this sort of shit because the only time you can actually get through to this motherfucker is like by speaking his language. Like you need to talk to him while you're fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but yeah, so Lucy real true Lucy Trucy tags in, but loses again. But unfortunately, Anthem finally, after being told a few times, realizes that he's winning these individual battles, but is losing the war. More reinforcements have come, and all the goblins, every goblin in the world, is here to fuck him up.
This is such a good reveal, like the moment where the arena goes down and there's just the army of goblins. Like it's just so perfect. Like as you said, all the stuff with Anthem realizing what they meant by win the battle, lose the war. The fact that like his shit behavior, like it's him being shitty to Liberty in America that has caused these people to turn against him. Like especially these were goblins who were just fighting each other for America and Liberty, but they're now united because he managed to piss them both off. Like, and Liberty's here too. It's just so good. I just loved this whole moment with all the goblins. It's just perfect.
Mm, yeah, it's very good. The goblins come to his aid. They've also got. Actually, I want to talk about this. So they say that of the three people that were with him, two of them readily agreed to just kind of get escorted out of town, and the third just kind of goes along with it. So does this imply Scott and Sin, who are already on the fence, just kind of
Yeah,
fully agreed to
100%.
bail? Is that what we're taking from that?
My read was 100% that Scott and Sin were basically offered, "Oh, you guys can leave," and they're like, "You know what? Like, fucking yeah."
Hell
And then,
yeah, yeah,
and then Cavender had the choice of standing there by himself or going with them, so he just went because
yeah.
even he knows he's not good enough to not get killed.
Mm, yeah. Which I thought was fun. So hopefully Scott and Sin have almost fully ditched the Musser
Yeah.
team.
Well, yeah. Like again, the goblins have come here for liberty in America, and his allies have left him. Like it's just delightful shade and fraud with like all the dumb shit Anthem's doing, sort of finally catching up with him.
Yeah.
It's this like victory that's just a very Kennett sort of victory over someone like Anthem.
Mm, yeah. So yeah, Anthem realizes that he's just throwing good spell cards after a bad idea finally, and gives up and joins America and Liberty in civility classes. And the trio finally get a chance to just like have some family bonding time.
Yeah, just like 13 years too late, they sort of
Mm,
finally get their vacation, just the three of them. Um,
yeah.
I mean, this whole scene, like you mentioned before, how this whole interlude is just sort of delightful, and this scene is like no exception. Like the way the Teds all interact is delightful. This poor teacher with like a badly taxidermized cat across her face is like trying to wrangle them. Just everything about the concept and the delivery of this scene of the Teds all sitting down to do civility classes is just hilarious.
Mm.
Like I love how America is giving him shit, and also she's wearing glasses that put the like image of a naked dude in front of her. Like it's just yeah, it's funny.
Yeah. Um, Anthem has 6 months of being here, right?
Yeah, which okay, I do have a practical question relating to that.
Hmm.
Like, is there any sort of syllabus for this civility course? Because I don't understand how a standard 3/7 day course can work for someone who's there for 6 months. Like, does he just do the course 50 times? Does he? Wait, how does this work?
Yeah. I think there's some personalization in the syllabus. It's
Sure,
hard to
like
say.
I imagine there's like just some inherent variety. Like I assume the teachers aren't teaching the same exact thing every single time they do it, but like surely if someone's there for 6 months, you've got to spice it up even more, right?
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they're hoping that after a week he'll be let out on good behavior.
Walbo the chat is saying that after a few repetitions, he might be expected to lead segments. Which, fuck, I want to see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be fun. But yeah, actually, so the other thing here is when he does tell America he's got like 6 months here, he says to her, "It's okay. I'll just like take it 30 days at a time and see how it goes." And it's just such a good callback to how the chapter opens with him saying like the plan with Vicky and her illness was to take it 30 days at a time.
Mm.
And I loved this because it felt like this was the moment where we're seeing like, okay, he's sort of resetting back to where he was at the start of the chapter, which is like, the whole thing of him coming to this civility class is he says he could have fought all the goblins, but it would have cost him, and he's finally made the decision to like chill out rather than fight, and it kind of feels like this might be the first time he's made that decision in 13 years.
Mm.
And now he's sitting here, and the thing that's horrifying him throughout this whole segment is that he's going to have to sit here and not be working, not be like on the problem. And so he's reverted to the last time he ever sort of had to face that idea, which was with Vicky when he was just counting the days. And yeah, part of me was just like, okay, we've got him back to where he was before the shit hit the fan. Can we now like point him in the right direction? Like,
Mm.
can it go better this time? Because last time, if Vicky had made it to 60 days or 100 days or whatever, it might have gone better. But she didn't even make it to 30, and that's what sent him off the cliff. And it's like now, bringing back this number counting is like, okay, we have a second chance with this guy.
Yeah. 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 Uh, it's so nice. It's such a heartwarming um ending, right? Like it this is exactly what Lucy was fighting for, and they got it. And it was just so
Yeah.
it's so good.
Well, and like Liberty's really carrying it to a degree too. Like she's here on a volunteer basis
Yeah.
just to spend time. Like Liberty is also fighting for the good here too, and I think that might be what makes the difference. Like
Yeah.
not just that the three of them are sort of here being forced to spend time together, but yeah, that Liberty is consciously making the effort to
Yeah.
like force him to sort of do this stuff. And I mean, I love the final end for this section. So the final line for this chapter is just him sort of worrying that the quiet will be too much for him and he won't be able to bear it. And then Liberty and America start talking about the problems, and he goes, "Oh, maybe it won't be that quiet." Um, and it's just such a great final line to sort of summarize why you think this can go better this time. Like, because I don't think Anthem is ready to just quietly sit and contemplate on stuff. He's too used to being always on. But Liberty and America are kind of the perfect people to let him face these ideas without like fully needing to switch off. Like they're going to keep him busy enough that he can sort of ease into it, I guess.
Mm. Yeah. 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 I look forward to it working. I look forward to
Yeah.
Anthem going back
Oh.
in 6 months and being reformed.
I'm cautiously optimistic that, unless he was right and Musa does come in and storm the gates, he
Mm.
should come out of this better, like with Liberty's help. Like, Liberty is really the thing that makes me think
Yeah. That
this
will
has a
make you think it's
shot,
going to work. Yeah.
because he's got someone actively just focusing on making him see some shit. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like again, I think if it was proper, like if he was here without his daughters, I would just be less confident because I think it would be too much for him and he'd like collapse under the pressure of having to just sit and contemplate. But like having to also manage his fucking chaotic little gremlin daughters will like make it halfway enough that he can actually engage with it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hope so. But we'll have to see. We'll keep track on that over time. But yeah, next up we're in Wild Abandon 18.8 from Avery's perspective. Avery's on her way back to Thunder Bay, escorted by Soot Sleeves and the song car thing. But yeah, there's
I
just
don't
some.
remember. Sorry, I don't remember what that thing's called. I just remember it's the other, and the song is the other, not the car. And I still don't understand what that means.
Don't worry about it. But yeah, the Kelly women are just kind of chit chatting on the drive back to TB.
Yeah, and like the Kelly chit chat banter stuff going on here is just extremely fun. Like Sheridan is obviously in like primo shit stirring mode. She's like intentionally aggravating Kelsey by bringing up sloppy coat room sex by their aunt and uncle.
Yeah.
Like she's just being a little feral. She's channeling the American liberty I was just saying would help Anthem. And that actually like made me think like, do you reckon this is good for Kelsey? Like to have Sheridan kind of being a shit like this? Because I could see the argument that like I was talking about with Anthem, it will distract Kelsey from all the magically related shit she's stressing about, or is it just like more shit on the pile?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's good for Kelsey. I feel like it's just kind of a nice, normal. I think the normality of this and her getting to be a
Yeah.
mother in a domain that she is more familiar with and more comfortable with is probably good.
Yeah, I feel like it depends on the person because I could see an argument for like Kelsey being like, I'm already overwhelmed. I don't need to deal with Sheridan talking about my sister having sex. Like,
Yeah.
like thinking about, I feel like Verona and Lucy used to have this argument a lot, like at the beginning of the story, because like Verona's response to stress is to act out and start making jokes about like Bristow turning into food, whereas Lucy gets more serious. So I guess it depends whether we think Kelsey's more of a Verona or a Lucy.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But I think it's good. I think it's good.
I hope so. The last thing Kelsey needs is more stress. She does get her revenge though in a bit. I love the moment where after Sheridan leaves, Kelsey's like, I don't remember Nora being a big girl though. Was she right that you like big girls? And Avery's just like, no, I'm out. Like, see ya. Like that is just such delightful, I don't know, parent shit. Like that's the sort of shit I'd love to do if I was a parent. Is just make my kids uncomfortable in that exact way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
It's
sweet
funny
revenge.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Here's a question. So Sheridan proposes a hypothetical world where where everyone has something. I forget the word she uses, but something incriminating, like emblazoned on their forehead. And Avery asks Sheridan what she would put on her own forehead, like what's her embarrassing secret. And like obviously that's a great like trademark Avery, eat your own shit sort of comeback.
Yeah.
Like I think it's been a very consistent thing with her. Is she's letting like she confronts people with their own nonsense. But I also think that's just a fun question. Like what would your dirty secret on your forehead be? I think that like that is a great car conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Would I want to live in a world where everyone had their dirtiest secret, so to speak?
Lurid details, yeah.
Oh, yeah, like on their forehead. Probably not.
But also, does it update? Like, if you do something
Oh yeah,
worse,
true.
like, what's the process for updating it?
Is it just like a part of our justice system of like, when you get arrested, they compare your crime to your past record, and if it's worse, you got to get it tattooed on there.
Yeah, and then like I guess laser tattoo removal.
No, they just write it small and then they cross off the previous ones, put a line through them.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, I was actually like sad that conversation got cut off because I was like, that's the sort of thing where if somebody brought that topic up in the car, I think I'd like have a great time talking about it. Bit weird to do on a podcast because I think it's going to get weirdly personal, but it's great car ride material.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah, just a really fun, delightful opening to the chapter. Like you have really good vibes coming into this stop at the petrol station, which is leading into what happens at this petrol station.
yeah. So yeah, at this petrol station, Avery answers a payphone and is transported to the realm of the local lord, a technomancy monster who asks some, basically doesn't let her pass through without some concessions.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is our first look at Charles's new Wonderland, and I don't like it. I'm just putting it out there. I don't think what Charles has done here is good.
Mm.
That's my hot take as of this chapter.
Yeah. It's pretty horrifying. Like, this is not one of the others that we've heard about uh, before, obviously, but it seems pretty spooky, implying this
Yeah,
is like just like a B or C tier list, but like also is very horrifying. So
yeah.
it doesn't bode well. There's no
This
chill
feels like
others
it.
out there.
Yeah, this feels like it's very much meant to be just like an example of what we should typically expect to be in any of these lordships around the region now.
Mm,
Like it felt like this was Wildbow's sort of, the example one that we should sort of use to extrapolate roughly what we'd expect everywhere.
mm,
And that's horrifying because this guy, I mean, we don't even know this lord's name. He never gives it to us. But we do know that he fucking sucks.
yeah. Um, Seems rough. He seems very rough.
I The aesthetic is really cool though. Like
But it is bodies, Elliot. You know.
that part less so, but like the rest of the very like Stranger Things style technomancy part, like everything above ground level, where the ground is the pile of bodies, is really cool.
Mm,
The pile of bodies, is it bad that my main issue with that is it feels like it would be hard to walk?
mm,
Like
yeah.
I just don't like uneven surfaces like that. That's literally the problem with this aesthetic.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. When we see this, and the way this scene goes is really just kind of like, it really helps to hammer home how fucked this whole situation is. I'd kind of sorted it into like, yeah, but Charles has told everyone to keep the Kennetiers
Yeah.
fine, so it's fucking over Musa more than it's fucking over the Kennetiers, but it's not. Like it is
No,
really just a fucked situation.
I had that as well. I felt like a really bad person because like we entered this realm and it was really horrifying. But part of me was like, oh yeah, I mean this
But
guy
it's going to be
sucks, but it's not
fine
like
for
Avery's in
Avery. Yeah,
danger. Like it doesn't
exactly.
really affect us.
Yeah.
This is fine. And then he started being like, no, you can't pass through my domain, extorting shit out of Avery. And I was like, oh wait, hold on, this affects us now. This is bad.
Mm.
Which is like a very fucking practitioner outlook on the whole thing of like, oh wait, this affects me now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think I really liked it for that reason. I think like mentally I was prepared for the Kennetys to get a bit of a free pass, and
Mm.
seeing that they don't really hammers home just how fucking terrible what Charles has done really is.
Yeah. Yeah. Um. So yeah,
So it's a great comparison to meeting the Thunder Bay Council too. Like that went sort of so well relatively, like with the Lord, and then this Lord just is such a shit.
yeah. Yeah. True. But yeah, so the Lord pitches a deal. Basically, deliver Millie is the first thing they suggest, but eventually gets negotiated down to just make sure Millie can't rebind the Bjorgman, which is
So we're
rough.
back to Bjorkman shit now. Like
Yeah,
it's it's such a fun delivery of like the Bjorkman comes up and Avery's like, no, it's okay, we've got her. We can put him back. And the Lord's like, no, you misunderstand.
yeah.
Don't put him back.
This Lord just wants to curry favor with the Bjorgman, and it's just such a quick way to be like, "Hey, this Lord's fucked," you know.
Yeah. This entire segment exists for us to truly understand the depths of shittiness that Charles has unlocked for the region.
Mm,
And this hits, especially because, as you said, so to be clear, the Lord says that the Bjorgman is still kind of trapped in the realm of another Lord. So the Bjorgman hasn't really got out yet, isn't
no.
like a lord, but like the other lords are sucking up to him. Or, like Charles has created a realm where like not only like because he's created all of these others and kind of supposedly got little rules in there so they can't get too evil.
Yeah.
Um, but also they're all the sorts who are like, yeah, let's like power up the Bjorgman and like so like, it's just that classic shit where like when you start a violent, bloody revolution, all the other like the worst kinds of people get elevated in that dynamic, and it's leading to like the Bjorgman seemingly being revered by an allegiance of various lords, even though he's still locked up.
Mm. Yeah, Charles has just set up a different, and dare I say it, worse system where instead of practitioners currying favor with each other, it's monstrous
Yeah.
others currying favor with each other.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
could have foreseen that Charles's plan would just result in the same system but worse and with different people doing it?
Mm.
If only somebody had been yelling this at him for like the whole fucking time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we get confirmation in defense of this local lord. We get confirmation that these people were just decoration, not actually innocents, hopefully, because the town isn't missing a few hundred people. So hopefully it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like there's yeah, no, you know what? Yeah, if you're gonna have a ground littered with dead bodies, I suppose it is better that they're not real people.
Yes. Yeah.
So that, but I don't know if like still feel like there's a gap from there to it being okay.
Nah, it's okay. I'll allow it. But yeah, so Avery makes this deal with this great friendly new other, and with that makes it back to class only a little bit late.
Yeah, and I mean, now we swing right back around to like the feel good happy times. Where like it's Avery's entrance to this class is fucking delightful. Where she comes in and she's like, "Sorry, I'm late," and the lady's like, "Oh, it's fine. You're on the sports team. We'll cut you like a bit of slack." And Avery's like, "Oh, I don't want special treatment." And then the teacher's like, "Okay, detention." And then Avery's just like, "Oh, I didn't want that either."
Yeah.
And like the rest of the class like laughs at this joke she's made, but it's Avery. We're in her head. We know this wasn't a joke she made. She's just a bit of an idiot. Like, it's just, it's a really funny moment. It was one of those things where it's like, so much of this story has been Avery finding her voice, and we're going to talk about that a lot when Anne comes up in a bit. But like moments like this, I was just like, okay, Avery, it's really good that you found your voice. Now it's like think about how you can use it more tactically. Like sometimes maybe you should shut up.
Yep. Yeah. It's very silly. It's a silly moment for Avery, and I think that's quite fun.
Well, yeah, how did she not like what? It's like a real like I don't know what I expected moment from her of just like, yeah, just the fact that she out loud said, "Oh no, I don't want that either." Like, what is she thinking?
Mm,
Well, I suppose she's not. Is the point?
mm,
It's so good. But yeah, like, I mean, speaking of like potentially Avery needing to learn when to not talk, she sits next to Janine here, and things are like seemingly pretty good with Janine
mm.
still. I'm so curious to see where the thread with Janine goes.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, Janine is kind of friendly, but still kind of a bit prickly, right? Around Nora. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Having said that, the team dynamic here is quite nice. Like, uh, Avery here has this dynamic with all the other people in class, which is nice and untainted
Yeah.
by all the magic shenanigans that were happening in Kennet. So, obviously she's close with Lucy and Verona, but that was like, that almost seems like it's turned into somewhat a business relationship in a kind of lame way.
Yeah, but it's we see it spreading too. Like Nora has been invited to be the drummer for a like band that the other sports girls are starting up. Like this is like
Mm,
Avery's just got so much good vibes that she's also like it's spreading. Um
mm,
and so that's where that's where it's going to continue to be interesting to see how Janine fits in, because if I mean as you touched on, it feels like Janine's big issue is going to be like Nora specifically, because Avery kind of chose Nora over her. Um
mm,
and as Nora becomes more integrated into the team socially, presumably that has more chance to kind of flare up and become a thing.
mm. Yeah.
Um, I guess like just sort of like thinking about it at like a higher level. I feel like we called out when Janine and Nora were first introduced to that. It sort of felt like they mapped to the deer and the wolf sides of Avery, um, and obviously, like Avery has chosen pretty concretely that she wanted to engage more with the person who represented the deer side of her and like foster that relationship more so than the wolf still. But like a part of that has been Avery has been like helping Nora come out of her shell a bit. So
Mm,
like does her relationship with like Janine and like the wolf side of herself take the form of her like helping Janine to, be less of a self-destructive like assholes at times. Um I don't know. I guess we'll see.
mm, yeah, yeah. So after class, Avery gets some time to catch up with her GF before Anne ruins it by pinging, pestering, and annoying. Um, uh, yeah, and this is such a nice moment, and it's a moment that Avery needed so badly, which is why it is especially frustrating, right? Like this is Avery refreshing herself, and it's
Yeah.
yeah.
And we know how badly she needs this. Like she's been looking so forward to this since she left for Kenneth. Like
Mm,
we know that yeah, like she just really needs some self recharge time and she finally gets it. And then Anne is pestering her with what Anne fully from the get-go admits is not an emergency.
mm,
Like it's I think that's what like is really sort of blood boiling about Anne is like Avery texts her, "Is this an emergency?" And Anne isn't even willing to pretend that it is.
mm, yeah, yeah. It's wild how little Anne sees this as a problem, right?
Yeah, I think we're going to talk about that at length when Avery confronts her because it's just yeah,
Yeah. Let's talk about that. So Avery goes to visit Anne and absolutely rips into her for how much of a shitheel she is. Avery is very righteously mad here. It. I I don't understand Anne at all. I don't get it. What is this? Why did she do this? Just to stir shit?
I love how it just this segment opens and just is like very clear to you. Like the text is very much saying Avery is really pissed right now. I think the first line is Avery followed the very established connection. Like you could read right from the start. Like Avery is here to yell at Anne.
Mm,
Um, and I love how she doesn't even hold off when Mr. Wint and Tiny Ann are in the room too. Like Avery comes in, introduces herself, and is sort of like, "Yeah, I guess I'm kind of like her intern." Also, stop calling me you fucktard. Like it's just, I can't imagine having the courage as a 14-year-old to come in and yell at a like grown woman in front of her family.
yeah.
What a hero.
It is pretty funny. I love that Avery keeps bringing it back to how Anne is doing something that even children
Yeah.
learn, like, not to do. And it's hilarious. It's so good. And it's so, like, Avery's being so righteously kind of condescending to Anne about it. It's so delightful.
I love how. Well, I think the thing that really gets to you though is Anne is just so unapologetically like not backing up her own side. Like as you said, Avery comes in and she's like, "Hey, I've read Essentials, the shit that you sort of read to your 9-year-old daughter, and it says not to do this." And
Yeah.
Anne is like, "Yeah, I know it says that in Essentials. I've been preparing it for my daughter." And then
Yeah.
just like almost stares back at you like blatantly saying, and I'm going to refuse to openly connect the dot of that meaning that I shouldn't have done this shit. And like then she'll move on to like, yes, well, it's the prerogative of somebody who's the acting lord to abuse power like that if they so choose. And it's like, oh, so are you the acting lord? Well, not officially, but like I could be sort of maybe. Like it's just it feels like she's not even really trying to be in the right. She's just decided that she's kind of in power now and she's just really pissy at anybody who isn't respecting it.
Mm, yeah.
Respecting this power she's given to herself unelected.
Yeah. And I don't even know what the big deal was. Like, Anne really just kind of wanted an update from Avery, even though Avery already sent emails and stuff. Like, it's so nothing.
Yeah, it's just it feels like Anne is super insecure and just like is just desperate to flex any power she thinks she has over people.
Mm-hmm.
Like that has to sort of be and like I get that this actually kind of ties into her practice. Like she mentions that as well. And like that's almost the weirdest thing about it is it sounds like she actually is really good at a really powerful form of practice that she essentially invented herself. Like
Mm,
through a certain lens, she is an incredibly powerful and like capable person.
mm.
But she just undermines it with this like bringing this petty coup and claim bullshit into every conversation.
Yeah, it's very silly. um I also love this, like, Avery is so dismissive of Anne's learned incompetence around technology, like, and
Yeah,
that really
good.
gets under Anne's skin so much. It's so good.
Well, yeah, because Avery changes her narrative from like, oh, I just choose not to do that with like, an idiot can do it and you're an idiot. Like, it's useful, so you're an idiot if you don't. Like, she
Mm,
refuses to let Anne have the narrative of just like, oh, I don't need that. People will accommodate me around it.
mm,
Um, yeah, I don't know because I deal with this a lot at work. Like, we're constantly trying to get non-technical people to use like VR experiences and just it's become like a pet peeve of mine is dealing with anyone who's over the age of like 35 and just sort of treats technology as like, oh, I don't really do that.
mm.
Just yeah. So I was really glad that Avery fucking stuck it to her when she was started talking like that.
Yeah, it's it's good stuff.
Um, also, so we don't we learn that like she who drowns in moonlight has gone off to reach out and get help or something. What? Where? Wait, what? Where? What? Who? When? Why could Thunder Bay possibly be reaching out to for any kind of help?
Mm. Charles? No, I have no idea. It doesn't make yeah, I don't know.
Like this just feels like a fun, like little beat that's being set up to get delivered on later. Like I Thunder Bay wouldn't be gone unless it was somebody important worth talking to, and I can't possibly think who it could be.
Mm,
So I'm very excited to see who Thunder Bay comes back with, I guess.
mm. Yeah, it's I
Maybe
don't
it's
know.
Florin.
I don't know. I doubt it would be Florin.
It would be funny though.
Mm, yeah. Um. So what's this, Elliot? What's this severance joke that we're all looking forward to?
Oh shit, I didn't get back and write that. Okay, well, so the next part is we start speculating about the goat, like Frankie the goat,
Yeah.
and so obviously I'm right at the end of Severance right now, and I'm still dealing with the goat mystery in that show. So I was going to make a clever joke about how there's mysterious goats in both these things, but I forgot to do it. So just think of it yourself, and let everybody chuckle at how good the joke was.
Ha ha ha. Back home,
Um,
Avery
no,
has
wait, sorry. So for real though, talk about the goat.
right,
Do, do
right.
do you have any speculation about what is up with Frankie? Like, because this is being set up to be like a thing that's going to be explored. Is what the deal is with Frankie and or her goat? What
Yeah.
Ristika and Charles stack them up with? What do you guesses?
So here's I don't have a guess, but I know what it actually is. Um,
Okay, that's good too.
do you want to have a guess first before I reveal what the answer is?
No,
Okay, well, I'll tell you then. The answer is that Frankie, sorry, not Frankie. The goat has had a
Frankie's monster, I think is what I'm saying.
Frankie's monster, yeah. The goat has had a curse placed on it that anybody who touches it, their consciousness swaps with it. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
kind of
So
like
Anne touched it already.
that character from Legion. You know the one I'm talking about.
I do. I forget their name as well.
Um, but so Frankie touched it, and the Frankie that we think is Frankie is actually the consciousness of the goat, and Frankie's consciousness is inside the goat now. So the trap is something to do with that, and getting a consciousness put into a goat. So, yeah, that's
I
it.
like that because they specifically called out that they didn't have the tools to like pull the spirit of the goat out, which means that they have no way of knowing that they would have pulled it out and it would have just been Frankie.
And when the Alcazar inside it, there's going to be a trapped Frankie inside, being like, "Oh my god, I'm stuck in this goat."
Yeah, I feel like this is something people should pale predictor like at us. Like,
oh yeah, what's the deal?
Goat theories. I feel like
Yeah.
because it's probably going to get answered fairly soon based on the fact they're already prepping to Alcazar in. So you know, time pressure's on to get in your hot goat takes.
Yeah. So stay tuned. The answer will be revealed, I guess. So yeah, Avery heads back home and has a brief moment with her mum, where she finds out Lucy's in the hospital, but mostly fine. And her mum's just kind of like, "What are we gonna do?" And Avery's like, "I don't know." Basically,
Her mum does that thing where it's like Avery. So yeah, Lucy's in hospital, like blah blah, and Avery's like, "Oh, cool, she won," and like.
yeah. Oh, she's
Kelsey's like,
still
so
alive. Cool.
Yeah, what does that mean losing is like? And Avery's just sort of like cricket noises. Yeah, it's a really interesting end to the chapter because like this chapter sort of was wildly swinging between like really really big highs and really big lows. Like we went from the delightful car trip to the Lord in the technomancy realm, back to like class and the mini date with Nora, right back down to the thing with Anne. And then it sort of ends on this like I guess like seemingly ominous note that Avery's doing fine on that wild ride, but Kelsey is not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I mean, I suppose the other side of that is we talked a lot in like in the first half of this arc. Connor was kind of Kelsey's rock through a lot of this. Like Connor was carrying Kelsey through this shit.
Yeah.
But they've like split up again now, right? Like
Yep.
Connor has stayed in Thunder Bay, and so now Kelsey's kind of on her own. And
Yeah.
when Avery was in Thunder Bay before, her mum was kind of the thing she kept shunting as like the last responsibility, but I don't think she can afford to do that anymore. So like,
Yeah.
I suppose now she can tell her mum more stuff, so it might be easier to integrate her. But like, yeah, I think Avery's going to have to step up and be like an emotional support for her mum more than she has been in the past, and that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what's going to happen with Kelsey. It's such an interesting moment to end on, like a foreboding rift forming kind of moment. I don't know. Yeah. It's kind of glum.
Yeah. This feels like almost Arc 14 all over again, where like Avery's come back to Thunder Bay, and there's just like 20 things I'm looking at, being like, God, where are all these threads going to go? Like, and then supposedly Musa might come back to Canada at some. Wait, can Avery afford to stay in Thunder Bay for a month? I don't. Yeah, we're kind of back to me not knowing exactly where this story is going in terms of like when shit's about to hit the fan, and I love it.
Yeah.
I think Halloween is still right around the corner too.
Yeah.
Like Florin's obviously gone, but like other people are now prepping for their Halloween
Maybe
parties.
that's the trap with the goat, is that it's going to have like a really cool Halloween costume or something, and it's going to put everyone to shame.
It'll win. That's actually in the bylaws for Thunder Bay. If you have the best Halloween costume, then you get to become the Lord.
Interesting. I can see that. But anywho, that's the end of our chapters for today. But not the end of our episode, because we have some predictions to pull out. Predictions left by the community in our Pale Predictor form, which you can find linked in the show notes down below.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull out my prediction first, Elliot, which I quite liked.
Okay.
Quite a simple one from Kipos, which is that Avery will forswear Musa. Lucy was responsible for Alexander's death. Verona was responsible for the death / downfall, I guess.
Undeath.
Yeah, of Bristow. And so the third beat of Avery getting rid of a BHI headmaster will be Avery forswearing Musa. Yeah, I like it. Very short, to the point. Just a kind of nice one, I like it.
Yeah, I actually, as an addendum to yours, I want to call out a prediction we got last week from Zach Defense, which was similar, but pitched an alternative in that instead of swearing Massa, Snowdrop will be the one to defeat Massa, because their argument was John was the one who really got Alexander. Verona kind of used the brownies to get rid of Bristow. So then Avery will use the other that's connected to her, which is Snowdrop. Which is just such a buck wild prediction that, if there's any truth to it, Zach Defense is in for a lot of points.
Yeah, fair enough.
But for my actual prediction, I've pulled out one by Lapsed Classicist, who is getting in early on the GOAT prediction discourse that we wanted.
All right.
So basically, Lapsed Classicist brings up that Marisica mentioned she'd hidden a curse in the Carmine Furs, and since John and the Kenneteers didn't try to wear them, the curse had gone unused, and so she was like, I'll repurpose it for something else. And so the thinking is that Lapsed Classicist is proposing that she's put that curse in Frankie's goat.
Interesting.
And so basically it's going to get set off when they Alcazar in.
Very interesting. What? Yeah, okay. I like it. Let's see.
I don't know if we know any details on what the curse was. I think we just know that it was for somebody who would wear them. So
yeah,
I kind of like this because you just wouldn't expect that sort of thing to be in a goat, because you don't wear live goats. But in Alcazar, it's about the one way you would, and it just feels like a bit of a delightfully Marisica-y ploy to be like, oh, they might try to Alcazar this thing to figure out what's wrong with it, but that's what's wrong with it.
Yeah, and they'll figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, cool predictions. If you want to leave your own predictions, you can do so by going to the link in the show notes below for the Pale Predictor form. Remember, also, we have a discussion question going on at the moment, which we'll get to the answers for next week, which is, which of the 3 Kennets would you choose to live in? Which is the one you'd spend the least time in? And, tell us why.
Yeah, basically rank the Kennets. And I think in terms of living in, I very much, I'm curious what people interpret that as. I very much picture which one do you choose to live in terms of just which one would you own or rent in, and which one would you sleep in. But that doesn't mean you can't commute to a different Kennet to work.
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. Is how would you divide up your life? Is your house in Kennet Found, but you go to work in Kennet Below, and what sort of job are you getting in Kennet Below? Yeah.
I look forward to getting into some of those next week. So remember to leave those in the discussion thread, which we linked in the show notes down below.
Don't forget to check out our Twitter feed at Pale Reflectcast. We post memes there, and sometimes other stuff.
Yeah, but mostly memes. Every single day. So go check them out.
That's actually true again now.
It's always been true. I don't know what you're talking about. If you want more from the Duff Media Network, you can go to duffmedia.com and check out all the other great shows on the network. There are a ton of them, and they're all wonderful. So head there for more information.
Yes, don't forget about the Patreon too. Patreon.com/doofmedia. I think we mentioned it last week, but it's worth saying again. There is a special pate themed episode on that Patreon that we did with Jenny and Malia. That was an absolute delight.
Yeah,
and
that was
speaking
very
of
fun.
Jenny and Malia, that's a great show to check out on doofmedia.com. Is Pale in Comparison.
Yeah. While you're on Patreon, of course, make sure to check out Wildbow's Patreon. You can give him some money to support his these creative works that we all love. I hear he's also accepting pieces of Millie Legendre this week as a special bonus way that you can support him. Either of those two will work. But head to patreon.com/wildbow for that.
And with that, we'll see you next week for more Wild Abandon, I'd assume.
Bye.